Hello, welcome to Freelancers Coffee Break. Today I don't have Ali with me, but I have Elcin. Some different fact about Elcin. I know her for many years, but we haven't met face to face ever.
No.
For yeah, 2 or 3 years probably I know Elcin. We work together on different projects, and she's a very talented graphic designer. But for all our plannings, they all failed and we never met face to face while she was in Istanbul. Now she moved to UK. It even became more impossible for us to meet face to face. So today I'm going to introduce you to Elcin, and Elcin, welcome.
Hi, Mehmet. It's a pleasure to meet with you today. And I think we've been planning this podcast for about a year now.
Yeah, most likely.
So finally at least we did this. So
Yeah,
even if we can't meet face to face, we can at least
yeah.
do the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start from the very beginning, before you became a freelancer. How long you been a freelancer so far?
I've been a freelancer for I started my company around 2020, so 4 years now.
4 years now, not very much long. And before then, what were you doing?
Before then, I've been working since 2005, I think. Yeah, and I worked as an art director for global agencies, working for international brands. Doing campaigns, pitches, presentations. But yes, but I worked in-house for a little while with a design company. And then I also I did digital agencies as well as the traditional agencies. So I've worked in print and on digital materials.
Any known agencies that the ones in the sector knows of?
Yes, quite. I've worked for BBDO at
Mm,
Proximity, and then at Geometry Global, and at FC, and lastly, I left FCB Art
yeah,
Group. Yeah.
very well known brands. And any known brands that you worked on that we know of? For
Yeah.
example, what kind of uh, design projects did you work on?
I worked with one of my favorite clients, I think, while I was working was Starbucks. And I kind of headed the team there because it was more design oriented. So Starbucks was one of my favorite brands to work with. I think we worked together for about 4 or 5 years. And then obviously everyone in the sector has worked with the Unilever brand because
They are huge.
yeah, they're so huge. And then PNG, Nivea, God, there's so many. Shell Oil.
Yeah,
This
okay.
goes on and
There
on.
are
There's
many
banks, unfortunately.
banks, unfortunately, because it's very difficult to create something for them. The subject it doesn't let you to be creative enough.
Yes, because I mean, when you have like something that's colorful as Starbucks, and we were doing everything for them, their in-store and their social media and events that happened, or their campaigns. So you have this more colorful world, I think, and I prefer that to banks, I think.
Yeah, I get it. So, how did you decide to move to freelancing? Because you have all these companies that are, at least for the ones in this industry knows of, and who probably lots of designers want to get into those large ad agencies, I would say. Even there are movies about them, I would say. I think BBDO, this Madman was about BBDO's first, at least that's what I read around.
Yes. Well, we when I gave when my son was born, which was in 2018, I knew that I wanted to bring him to the UK, and I grew up here in the UK, so I have my citizenship. So he immediately has his. So one of the reasons I built my company was because I knew that with my age and my experience, it would have been harder for me to find a job here and start from scratch. So I wanted to build my company so that I'd be able to have I'd be able to move and not be struggling to try and find a job. And then other than that, it was also the time and the hours and the effort and the money. It just wasn't, it's hard when you have a child. You need to think about, the school, the nannies, and like all these other expenses. And with the amount of time especially was a big factor as well, because there's only a certain you need to spend so much time with your child on during your free time, that you need free time. And it wasn't with agent when you work with agencies, you've got the weekends, you've got the late nights, not late nights, you're there until 2 a.m. maybe 2-3 days consecutively. So yeah, it just wasn't working out for me anymore, and I needed to find something. I needed to start this so that I could plan for the future.
So how was the beginning for you when you made the first move?
When I made
Was it like you expected it to be, or much more difficult than you expected? Because you get your salary every month, so it's a big change.
Well, I did it a little bit strategically. So while I was working at FCB, I found my first client, who was a startup. And first we agreed with just a couple of images per week, but then it eventually evolved into a full-time thing. And so at that point, I needed to I found a junior from one of my colleagues at FCB. She said that she knew of this intern, and she said she was really capable and that she could help me out. So I would, do the design work, and then she would just do the implementations. And I could do that while I was working at FCB as well. And this was during when the pandemic had started. So I had it was good because I was at home, so I could, switch my screens from work to work. And then eventually I knew of Upwork. I had made a profile on Upwork. So I think we were looking for jobs as well on Upwork, for the project-based ones. So when I started off, I was working at FCB. I had the startup job, and then I was also taking on some projects on the side through Upwork. And then once everything started going, snowballing, I guess, then I was able to leave the agency and then focus more on the business.
It's
But yeah,
real strategic move.
yeah. I mean, it took a long time, and I spent a lot of, my days were, because my son was 2 years old at the time. So my husband and I we'd pretend to be leaving the house, and then the nanny would turn him back, and then we'd come inside, and then we'd work until noon, when he's sleeping, and then we'd come out, eat some food, and then we'd go back into our rooms, and then I'd be, trying to do everything. And it wasn't easy in the beginning, and you work for small amounts of money when you first start, not really, really small amounts of money. So I didn't have the luxury to just leave FCB and then live off of that.
So for the moment, because when you did this switch, you were in Istanbul, then you moved to UK. That means you fulfilled your plan.
Yeah.
And so far, what were the difficult parts that you didn't expect when you became a freelancer? What were you weren't expecting? What surprised you when you moved it? Because you are in the industry, probably for you the work hasn't changed much.
No, it hasn't changed much, but when you first start off, you don't really have the luxury to pick, because you just want to get as many things as you can to build up your portfolio. I think so, because you're working with less experienced, when you're working at an agency, in front of you, your client is an account executive, somebody who's been in the industry, who knows how things work. It's one of the harder things, I think, is because when you're working with, like, through these freelance jobs or startups, you find a lot of people who aren't that experienced, who don't know of the way that the work goes, which I think is a bit challenge. Like, you get surprised every day. I had a client last week who opened a vector file to make sure it was 300 dpi, and I had to explain to it, it's just a vector file, you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, it can be any resolution you want.
Yeah. So it was funny. You do get these things, and then you just need to be able to handle it professionally, the way that you speak to them. But you do get shocks. So
What I hear from ones who were working from agencies before and they moved to freelancing, the biggest difficulty they have usually the bargaining, the sales part is done by a project manager at
yeah,
agencies or account managers. And they put the work in front of you and then you deal with it.
yeah,
Now you have to deal with everything.
yes,
How is that part for you?
yeah,
Money part.
the money part. Yeah, I'm lucky because my husband's in finance. He's been helping me, with everything. Like, all the strategies. Like, for instance, when I first started off with the startup, he was like, just make sure you time everything, each project, and you make your list, and then this, which helped me quite a bit, because we had started off with a small amount of money, but then I was able to prove to them, yeah, this is how I'm working. And then I was able to leverage my price higher. In that way, I was able, for, like, with the project-based ones, I can now, like, I'll time how much effort's gonna go, do it with the hours, with how much my price is per hour, and then come up with the price. But yeah, so he helped me with getting that part, because I'm horrible with money. I mean, talking about money, I really hate talking about money.
Yeah, except I think who are involved in finance,
Yeah,
everyone else hates money because it's a difficult subject to talk about. And usually when clients like your work, the project is likely to get stuck on the money part.
yeah,
They don't have the budget. It happens, and it's very difficult to convince a client if they have a fixed, in their mind they have a budget, and you try to push them, or you don't even try to push them, but still a difficult subject to talk about.
it is.
Okay, I charge this much.
I try to, if I can, when we talk with the client about the budgeting, I just tell them I'm gonna write to you, because instead of speaking, I find that writing it out through a message or an email is just easier, because I can, sentence it properly. Yeah. Rather
So on video calls, you'd usually prefer not to tell any
no,
price
no,
and
I
wait.
tell them I'll write to them. I just finish
Okay.
it.
So I know that you are not on the budget side, your rates. I know that because we work together. So how is your success rate? Because it's, as I said, this is the most difficult part. Your
Mhm.
work is very good, but finding work for high-end clients as a freelancer is a very difficult job,
Yeah.
because usually they are working directly with ad agencies. The remaining ones are very few, and finding the right client is difficult. What do you do?
You're correct. Like, it is really hard. So far, the way that we've found clients has been, well, there's been some that's come through Upwork, and then some that has come through word of mouth, and even some that came to our website or found us through Behance. So it's important to keep, your portfolio updated on your platforms, even though you won't get so many through your website. And also it's because the clients like our work, and we're very fast, and we do good quality design work. So because they like working with us, they'll recommend us to their friends, and that's how how we've also gotten jobs as well, new clients as well. And then also just you need to network, which I'm starting to slowly.
Yeah. How was it going so far in the UK networking?
So far, it's going. It's in its shallow end of the sea so far. I'm just
Mm.
walking gradually towards it. So, but I have made a few connections, and then hopefully, when you first make connections, it takes a little while to get the first job and everything. So I do have some things, but they're in the kind of in the making right now.
Okay. And how active is the market in London for graphic design? I think you're in a lucky position because
Yes.
that is a very well-known, like probably Paris, London, New York are one of the few top graphic design markets,
Yes.
and you are in the middle of one of them.
Yeah, it's there's lots of jobs here, but I'm trying to find more that's more suitable for rather than freelance, then have it more about because I want to grow as an agency, so I want
Mhm.
something that I can do find that way. So I have tried like we as we discussed before, I tried Fiverr.
Mhm.
Now I'm trying to reach out to other marketing directors via LinkedIn, or through also now with Meow as well.
Mm.
And so there is a large they're always looking for freelancers, because we see all the they want someone for a month, 4 days, for a week. But I'm trying to find more like clients that,
Longer term.
yeah, longer term, more full time. So
Okay.
yeah.
And I also know that you have a team. How, first of all, when you were telling your story, you said I had to work with someone in the company, like an assistant. So how did you decide that you need to grow your team, and how many people are working with you right now?
Well, as the projects were coming in, I needed somebody like I needed one I needed I noticed that I needed more help. So I had one junior. I had an intern for a while, who turned into a junior. And then I also had one of my friends who's a copywriter from before. We used to work together, and because she knows me really well and she's quite objective, I wanted to work with her. And then as we grew, I hired a senior art director. And now, yes, because I mean, when I first started, I was only thinking it would just be me, but because of
Mhm.
the way that things grew, um, it just made more sense to work with a team. uh, and I think it's good because I want it to my aims are a bit more different than just staying as a freelancer, I guess.
I think being a freelancer just alone is too difficult as at the same time. It becomes too difficult to go on holiday
Yeah,
if you're alone, because there's the potential of losing a client.
yeah,
When you're on holiday, they can say, "Oh, I'm on holiday." They'll find someone and they can be as well happy with that person, continue with it. You
yeah.
don't only lose 1 week of work,
You,
but suddenly the whole client, even.
exactly. That's true. Um, like for instance, one of the clients that I had that was full time, the marketing director there, she only wanted to work with me. She wouldn't acknowledge the team.
Mhm.
And like my holidays were I'd start, the mornings, with my like relaxing, and then after breakfast I'd have to get on the computer, then I'd have to relax again, and then so it was like I won't do that again with another client. I think they were an exception, but it is hard because they think that you're there full time all the time,
for them.
24/7.
Yeah. In fact, the reason I first worked with you was something like this. Is I don't do graphic design. I just do post-production retouching. And a client of mine asked for graphic design work. And when I first contacted, and it was, I think, a work that I submitted on Upwork probably. And the reason was that I didn't want to say no to the client, because if they may find another graphic designer, then that graphic designer may just say, I do retouching as well, or I have someone in the team who does retouching as well. Then
Yeah.
you lose the client. So, and you cannot specialize on everything. That's
No.
for, yeah. And what do you specialize on, and what your agency specializes on?
Well, our agency, we specialize more on branding, marketing, and then package design, web design, like all those, the presentation design. We've done now, I think this year, which was new, is book covers. Because of my background and digital and how the two work, so we do everything that's online or offline, and that's just anything from your banners to your brochures to everything. So basically anything that's graphic design related.
Nice. Any known books so far? Are they English books, Turkish books?
English books. One's in
English.
Australia,
Uh-huh.
and then the other one is a British writer, and she's moving to Dubai, and she's talking about her experience. But they're both not, known. So
Okay.
okay.
So, for what are your future plans? How do you plan to expand your business? You want to become an agency. You're trying to network in UK. So, how many people you plan to be, and are there any fields you just, and this branding area, you're planning to focus on? Anything else that you want to do for the future?
I think for the future, what my plan is, I try to set goals for each year,
Mhm.
one for myself and one for the company. And then for the company this year, my plan was, because we came in September, so I've been trying to grow steadily. But I think what we need to do is grow a little bit more financially, and then eventually, what I'd like to do is find more art directors that are global. Maybe someone from South America, maybe someone from Sweden or Norway, just to get a few more different perspectives. And I think it would be good for the team as well to interact with new people.
Mm.
I don't Obviously the time zones will be different, but they will find a way to.
Yeah, in today's internet tools, you can manage that.
Yeah.
Do you want different art directors, so you'll have different visions for a project, or you want different art directors for different markets? What's the reason, or both of them?
I think for different perspectives, but both of what you said, um, I think it's important because we're working. Our clients are, there's some in Australia, some in Europe, some in a lot of them in North America. And I think it would be, because we don't also work in an office environment. We use Slack to communicate. We do the whole screen share, and then we'll brainstorm together, look at, we do all our researches before when we get our briefs. But I think that there's different ways to think about things, and I think different perspectives can also help us keep fresh, help them maybe go keep fresh as well, bounce off ideas. And so I think it would be good for the producing more creative projects, as well as broadening our minds as well.
Okay. one question. If you want to plan to become a freelancer, you are working at an agency and you just want to leave the company, what would your recommendations be for someone new? And B, someone who just graduated from an art school and don't want to get into corporate life, what would you recommend? Would the recommendations be different or same? Or what would you recommend?
For the person who's worked at agencies and who wants to do freelance, like the way that I started, the company that I worked for offered me really, really small amounts of pay. So I would, if they're really serious about it, then they have to like not think about the financial part, but try to work the two together. And then eventually, once it starts once they see that they can be independent, then they should because I don't think it's a good idea to be like, okay, I'm stopping now and I'll just start after I quit. You need to plan it properly. And for the person who's leaving art school, I think they need to I think working is important because you make a network, you meet different creative directors, you meet other art directors. When you're doing campaigns, it's good to be able to look at somebody's screen or bounce off ideas like instantly. So I think because I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't pull all those late nights, do those endless pitches, some that won, some that didn't, and then we did the campaigns and we worked on the weekends. Those are experiences I think you need to be able to, plus it builds your portfolio, and then once you get into freelancing, then you have something there. Because when you're fresh out of university and you want to do freelancing, it's really not that easy to find jobs if you don't have experience, especially.
Yeah. I guess what you mean is like even if you are not happy with the work from big ad agencies or medium ad agencies, you have to consider them as like a master's degree or another education level and keep up with them for some
It
time.
is. I mean, it's hard. It's not easy, but you do have fun, and then you also have really, really bad days. But but at the end of it, it's good. I have many friends through it, and I think it's important to have that because it also helps you see, because what you learn at school is completely different to what you do at work. At work you really start to see like how you need to look at something when you're creating the visual for the campaigns, or start thinking about how you can implement ideas into different mediums, when you can if you need to think 360, like how would I take this idea, how would I do the billboards, what would the messaging be, and then what would happen once we take it into the digital world, where what the banners would say, what the landing page would be, whatever the thing is, like all of these things, the social media, so you need to work basically.
Yeah. Okay. Any last note to tell to our listeners?
Let me see. I think
Anything that you think you skipped or forgot to tell, or would you like to tell?
what would I like to tell? I think if this, it's important to do what you like doing, so, and if this is what you want to do and you really want to become a freelancer and be independent, then it is important to put the work in. And like I said, like in the beginning, it's not going to be easy. Try to make your just when it took me years to get to leaving my job. I always had this plan in the back of my head, so just plan it out properly so that you're not in the like floating in the middle of the ocean. I don't I hope that's a
Yeah. Thanks a lot. And it wasn't as frightening as you expected it to be, right?
No.
For you escaped for a year. Now it's okay, right?
Yeah, it is. It is much. I mean, I thought it would be a lot worse. I like being behind the camera. It's nicer
Yeah.
being behind the camera.
You like to draw and design rather
Yeah.
than speak in front, except Zoom calls, of course.
Yes, of course, except for Zoom calls. Even those were hard to at first get used to. But you know, and then you get used to it. You do one, you do two, and then you know how you're gonna speak, what you're gonna say, what the client wants to hear. So
Okay.
Mm.
Thanks a lot for attending. Maybe we'll talk again in the future
yes,
to learn more about how your business is doing.
exactly. Maybe you can see if I've managed to progress or not.
Yeah, that would be a nice interview, a talk to maybe 1 or 2 years later.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.